have to say one thing for the record. I think am I correct in thinking all four of us here in the studio today are liberals and vote Democratic usually?
Yes.
Yes.
Me.
Okay. This is just representative of that 80%. There are members of the ACA.
If there were
for
a
example,
fifth person in this room,
it would probably be one of our token Republicans or libertarians, which we have them. And God bless them.
was that a compliment or not?
You figure it out. So anyway, the ACA, the organization that we are members of and which hosts this show, has no political affiliation. It just is a fact that most atheists, 80% of atheists, tend to vote Democratic. So
that is true.
When
you want to speculate on why?
No, I'm sticking with the Coulter thing.
Okay.
So when the Republicans come at the Democratic Party and say, you're atheists, and they say, oh no, we're not, we're Christians, and we get alienated, we are going to there are natural hostilities there that could boil over and drive a chunk of the Democratic Party away. Now, statistically, the votes recently, the national votes, have gone very close to 50-50 either way.
Right.
So let's sort of simplify this a bit and say half the country, or half the voters, are Democrats, right? Well, what percentage of the country is atheists? Somewhere between
10%,
let's say 10.
10.
10, which means what percentage of the Democrats? If we're almost all Democrats?
About 20 or less.
Almost 20%. Say 16% if we're
sure.
like right?
16.
16%. Now, what political party wouldn't love to have to cause the alienation of 16% of the other party's votes?
Good
right?
question.
There ain't no.
Right.
That I think this is intentional. I think it's absolutely intentional. But the interesting thing that came up in... Yes?
So Ann Coulter is pointing out our godlessness in order to provoke a knee-jerk reaction which will split.
She is accusing the entire Democratic Party. Notice that her syllogism makes no sense.
Right.
It's completely not true that all Democrats are atheists, right? It's just not true.
But
the accusation of godlessness on the part of the Democratic Party will be responded to, and probably, if they're not thinking, it will probably be responded to by the Democratic Party if they don't think, which, big, giant organizations tend not to. If they don't think about the consequences, by responding to Ann Coulter saying, oh no, Democrats are actually Christians, 16% of the Democratic vote could just go away.
There's another angle on the gay marriage thing now that I think about it.
Yeah.
In fact, kind of what you're implying here is that the Republican Party is actually a very homogenous institution. They try to get their members to vote the same way all the time on everything. Whether it's related to fiscally conservative stuff or theocratic conservative stuff. They've, for instance, convinced that segment of the Republican Party that is poor but religious fanatics to vote for massive tax cuts for rich people, which has nothing to do with their interests, but it has become part of their interests because they're interested in developing this very homogenous party that believes the same thing on all issues.
Right.
Whereas the Democratic Party, tends to be... well, I heard somewhere that using the term Democrat Party was actually some kind of Republican linguistic trick at some point.
Okay, go on.
Sorry,
go on,
getting sidetracked.
Point, yeah.
The Democratic Party is actually sort of a mishmash of various people who support different causes and are generally supportive of...
progressive?
Right. How can I put this in a nice little soundbite? That's kind of the problem.
I'm not sure there is. But that's it. Yes, the Democratic Party right now is a coalition of groups.
A coalition
who tend
of
to
people
agree
who tend
on
to be accepting of people and not trying to throw bombs.
Well, they need to be accepting of other people. I'm not sure that is a natural tendency more than it is a necessity.
Right.
But that necessity is exactly what Ann Coulter and the rest of the right wing are
attacking. Yeah.
And it became crystal clear when I listened to her on this Catholic show when she started going after Wiccans and New Agers in the Democratic Party.
Right.
It is true that the Democratic Party gets the flaky New Age wackos. This is a fact.
I'm afraid so, yes.
And so tarring the entire Democratic Party with flaky New Age wackiness is exactly the same strategy, merely targeting a different segment of the Democratic coalition.
As is the gay marriage thing. And the abortion thing.
I take as much offense at being labeled a wacky New Age lunatic as a liberal Christian Democrat takes at being labeled an atheist. Right?
Right.
So...
And there was also talk after the election of how some people were saying, we really should concede this whole abortion thing because it's not that big an issue for everybody. And maybe it would put us in a stronger position if we had more pro-life Democrats.
I think it's fine to contemplate things like that, and I also think it's great that the Democratic Party has not gone that way.
Right.
But
it's another thing which
discussions are fine. I don't mind. I mean, if we wanted to, if Democrats wanted to say, in order to get in power, maybe for now we ought to give up on the whole gay marriage thing.
Right.
That is a fine discussion to have. I don't care so much about that there's a discussion. I don't think discussing things make you evil. But thankfully, the party's not going that way. So I'm happy. But I think that the response to Ann Coulter should not be so much Ann Coulter is an ugly cunt, which is often the response, and accurate but not relevant. The response should be for people in the Democratic Party coalition, and I apologize to our listeners, by the way, for dragging you through all this Democratic stuff if you don't happen to be Democrats. We're sorry. We're talking about this for the moment. We'll move on to other issues in a minute. But I think the response needs to be for atheists and Wiccans and New Agers and liberal Christians in that party to sit down and work out how it is we're going to coexist. We ought to actually talk about our differences and find the common ground and focus on that actively in order to prevent the sort of knee-jerk reaction that Ann Coulter and the rest of the evil Republicans are trying to force us into.
Trying to provoke.
You are right, but can I still call her an ugly cunt?
You certainly may.